All right, so we're going to talk about the women of our faith. Huh? I got a lot of things to talk about. This may end up as a double header, like going to next week even. Let's get it started here. I mean, give you an idea. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What we're going to cover tonight, or tonight and next week. All right. In going through all this, it's amazing what I found in all the research. You can see this 2 pages back to back of all the women mentioned in the Bible, and trying to pick some out that to discuss. I always try to make it interesting, so I want to make sure it's something that will be interesting to you. And I thought I'd start. There's a lot of the women saints that we've spoken about. We've spoken about the preeminent one, and if you missed that one, it's on the St. Nektarios YouTube page that the church set up, that Brian has set up and put together, so you can see that. We talked about the myrrh bearers last week, even though I'm going to start with them, and Mary Magdalene. We went to a little detail last week on that, on her and the myrrh bearers, but I'm going to start there because there's a couple things I want to clarify. And then the others are ones that are of interest to me in that through all these trips I've done overseas, I've been able to venerate their relics. So I felt I owed them the obligation of presenting them to you tonight. The last one in particular I find really fascinating. So any of you going on this next trip to Jerusalem, and it's something that we're going to be working on once we're allowed to get going again. Father Andreas wants a trip, so that means we're going to have a trip. And you'll see some of the relics, that are preserved for these people. They're all saints. Most of them are saints. And I picked ones that are recognized for some notable accounts, like the first of this or the first of that. So let's get started then. I want to talk about Mary Magdalene a little bit, because I know we have a lot of people who watch these programs that are converts or new to the faith here. The Catholic tradition has Mary, if you read it about Mary Magdalene, it says that she was a harlot, she was a prostitute, and she was this and that and whatever. That's not Mary Magdalene. That's not the Eastern Orthodox understanding of Mary Magdalene. It says it in the Bible. Mary Magdalene was not the adulteress, repentant whore as accepted by the Catholic Church. That's not in the Bible. Here's what's in the Bible. And a certain woman who had been headed of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary called Magdalena, out of who had come 7 demons. She was possessed by demons. Okay, that Mary, the prostitute, is a different Mary. It's the one who was stoned. Remember the story of the stoning where Christ says, "Whoever is free of sin, let him cast the first stone." People equate that with Mary Magdalene, and it's not. Okay, I mean, you read it right there. It's exactly right from Luke. You can look it up yourself. It says she was possessed by demons, and she was. But she became, when you talk about women of the church and men of the church, there's nobody more significant than Mary Magdalene, the things that she did. And she witnessed so many of the things that sometimes some of them aren't even mentioned, the things that she witnessed, and it's just comes from tradition and some of the apocryphal writings. But and there were a couple with her, like number 2 there, Joanna and / Junia. That's the same person. Apostle Paul calls her Junia, and Luke calls her Joanna. They both were myrrh bearers. They were at the crucifixion. They were at the resurrection. Okay, then they went with Mary Magdalene, where Mary was going to the tomb to finish the preparation of Christ's body for burial. They were there, And it says it, I think I got the scripture. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Mary, the mother of James, and the other women with them who told these things to the apostles. She is commemorated on August 3rd, so it's coming up soon. They were at the Last Supper and at the Pentecost. And she also was part of the 120 that witnessed the selection of Matthias. We talked about that last week. He was the replacement for Judas. So, there are lots of women who were at all the events, but Mary Magdalene is preeminent with that. We believe that the Mother of God was also accounted for in all those where it says the other women, and in some of the scripture it mentions the other Mary, and we accept that as the mother of Theotokos. Now there was also a woman named Anna, and she was a prophetess, the daughter of I don't know who Phanuel is, from the tribe of Asher, commemorated along with Saint Simeon. Now, those who have gone to the trip with us to Jerusalem, and we'll go on the next trip, we go to the Church of Saint Simeon, where that's where he's actually interred, and it's really interesting. Saint Simeon was doing a write-up, historical account of Christ, and there was in the writing he read. He was proofreading. In the writing he read, it said a virgin birth. And not that he took offense against it, he just didn't believe it, that it was possible, a virgin birth. So he went to cut it out of the scripture that he was reading, and an angel appeared to him. We assume it was Gabriel because he was busy that time. But it was an angel. The Bible says an angel, and the angel says, no, it's going to be a virgin birth. Leave it in there. You will see it. And he does. He confirms, and the icon at the bottom right there is the event. That's Simeon in the middle. To his right is Anna, the prophetess, and she's just recognized as being with Simeon, and she's commemorated on the same day. Simeon was just commemorated on February 3rd, and she was commemorated with him at the same time. If you look in the Prologie books and the books that list the saints of the day, or if you're in the matins and heard the choir singing, the chanters, we mentioned her name along with Simeon. And once Simeon saw the child, that's when he said the famous line, Lord, now thy servant depart in peace, for I have seen with my eyes, the Christ. So she is testimony to the fact that the certification of Christ by Simeon, that's what Simeon does at that point, certifies that this is the Christ that he was waiting to see. She is there to witness that, just as she witnessed all these other things I just mentioned in the last paragraph. So, I mean, they're very important to the whole story. They're the ones, and they're given charge. You're going to see that these women are given the role to go out and teach, okay, along with the apostles. Many of them, today you're going to learn, or many of them are called equal to the apostles, okay? Mary Magdalene is recognized as equal to the apostles, same rank as in our faith as the apostles were. And Anna is known as a prophetess, and I can't find out what she prophesies because I searched it. It doesn't say it in the Bible, and I don't know what she prophesies. But I do know that she witnessed all these things that Simeon said and everything, and she's included in the icons as a confirmation of that. So that's Anna, and then we go down. I just found this one 5 minutes before we started. It was last minute entry, so I don't have much detail on it. But these are again names. If you look in the book of Acts, Acts is a great book to read in the Bible because it gives you a history of the buildup of the church. It gives you a history, a little history prior to it. It lists the first martyrs and everything. It's a great part of the history. Remember when we talked about the Bible, there are three parts of the Bible: historical, instructive, and revelations. Okay, those are the three components of the Old Testament and the New Testament: historical, instructive, and prophecies. So Eodia and Sindahi, I'm reading, this is the scripture, Philippians 4, verse 2. Says, I implore Eodia and Sindahi to be of same mind. This is St. Paul talking. Same mind in the Lord. And I urge you also, true companion, help these women who labored with me in the gospel. Okay, that's a very important line there. I'm trying to understand the role of women. He's telling you, Paul's telling you right there. These women labored with him in the gospel, in the presenting of the gospel of Christ. With Clement also and the rest of my fellow workers whose names are in the book of life. That's a very significant paragraph, and that's why I bring up their names. That's the only time I find their names in the Bible. I think it's mentioned one other time. But it is apparent that, you know, all the services, when they start doing services, you know, they would eventually end up in the catacombs, but they also were in the homes of everybody. So the first services were really conducted in homes. And so who's in the house? The women, right? So the women are there, and they're part of the service. You know, as they see it every week and whatever, they got to learn and understand the things, and they were given the role to teach. They actually taught a lot of the faith to those who were attending and everything, and they became women became very important in the early part of the establishment of the church. We're going to talk about Phoebe in a minute here. She's an interesting one, the deaconess. That's her title. So we have a woman who's got a title of deaconess, and she's commemorated September 3rd. So she's coming up, along with Dorcas and Saint Joanna. I don't think that's the same Joanna that I was just talking about, number 2. So let's move on here. You've got we're going to talk. This is Phoebe over here on the left where the arrow is. We're going to be talking about her. She's going to come up. Let me go back here. All right, this is an icon of Anna, and this fascinated me. I've got 2 icons for Anna. She's down here. That's her here, and this one. And there's a head of somebody. That's John the Baptist. And I don't know what she's doing looking at the head of John the Baptist. I tried typing in what is Anna doing looking at the head of John the Baptist. Nothing popped up on Wikipedia. So I'm going to keep researching that because I'm intrigued by that icon. I can't understand it. I don't know what that is. And icons always tell a great story, so I've got to figure that one out. I'll get back to you next week on that one. Okay, let's move on. All right. Now, I put Helen in here, and a lot of you know Helen. I'm trying to get ones that you may not be familiar with, but I feel obligated to because it's Friday that we're celebrating her name day, and, you know, it's my wife's name day, so I don't know if you're familiar with all that this woman did. Plus her influence on her son, Constantine. I mean, she was a great influence on him. You know, when I say she built the church, I mean, she didn't sit there with a hammer and nails and build the church. I mean, she organized. What she did, she identified the places she wanted a church built, okay? And her son gave her that right to do that. She went out, and first place she went to is the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. And I don't know if you heard in the news yesterday, a lot of the bombing was going on in Bethlehem. So I just hope our church is okay there. Now, when she builds these things too, we're talking 2,000 years ago, and they've been devastated by earthquakes and, you know, just wear and tear. And she, I mean, so she also built the Church of the Holy Resurrection. If those of you have seen that on our trips, that's huge. I mean, it's bigger than St. Nektarios, the Church of the Resurrection. It is huge. She didn't build it, or I mean, she wasn't there as the foreman or anything like that. but she identified that a church had to be built there. She put it there. She also built a chapel at St. Catherine's Monastery, which is still there today, which has the relics of St. Catherine. We're going to talk about St. Catherine because there's an interesting story about her. She found the true cross. And if you go to the Church of the Resurrection, you go down a stairway, and they still have that area, and they have it very well preserved, and where she found the crosses. She has a title equal to the apostles, as well as Mary Magdalene. And I don't know if you know this, she actually, had the church, St. Peter's Cathedral, built, the first one. Not the one that we see now, the amazing, huge one, but there was one there, a smaller rendition, that burnt down. Almost all these churches burnt down at one point and were rebuilt. And she also built a church on the Mount of Olives. Now, I don't know about this church, Church of Eleona. I don't know what church that is. It's not a Greek Orthodox church today, I don't think. Maybe it is. I got to look that one up too. So, I mean, the things she did that we have today, still today, that preserved the faith. She's a heavy hitter as far as the church is concerned, and then her son, the things her son did, and she was responsible for a lot of what he did. His faith in the church came from his mother. So she is worth being in church on Friday for. Okay, moving on. Okay, now we'll come to some of the firsts. This is the first person baptized outside of Jerusalem, outside of even Greece, and this is credited as the first baptism in Europe. And when we did a trip there, Hank Hanegraaff was with us. I couldn't get him to leave the place. He just sat right where you're seeing these people are. He just sat there and just tried to envision what happened there. He said, "This is big. This is where the church started to grow and expand and become universal." Up to that time, all the apostles are hanging around Jerusalem. It was Paul that first ventured out. Paul goes to Greece and tries to talk people who've seen Zeus, who believe in Zeus and Apollo and all these make-believe gods, try to convince them to believe in a god. And you know how stubborn Greeks are. And he's out there trying to do that. And Lydia is the first person to be baptized in Europe. And so this is the spot. It's covered in the book of, I think I listed it there. Where is it? These pictures I can see. There's like I said, this is a spot where she was baptized. Okay, right here, and back there is there's a monument in tribute to her, mentioning this. And then there's a church, about a half a block down on the same grounds here, going this way to the left. And that's the inside of the church. It is one of those churches you have to see. It's a church dedicated just to baptism. Okay? That whole church is a baptismal font. I mean, look at it. See, there's no pews, no places to sit. Of course, in overseas, people stood. It looks like there's places where people would sit here and witness the baptism. Here's a baptism. They've got another font over here. You can't see it. It was for adults, and adults would go into this like a sauna pool. It was right about here. But it's beautiful, the church. The whole thing is marble like this, like you're seeing here. And it has that blue hue that you see here. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place. And it's the Chapel of St. Lydia in Philippi. Actually, we're not going to go to Philippi, so you won't see this. This is the closest you're going to get to it. So, but this is that's her role. So the woman who was the first baptized outside of Jerusalem, outside of Greece. And like I say, she's credited with the first baptism in Europe. Of course, Greece is in Europe. I don't know if Paul was baptizing at that time. But Paul used to visit her house. There's very little written about her. You're not going to be able to find much if you go on the internet. But even in the Bible, the incident is mentioned. Okay, and it's in there in Luke, and I should have written the scriptural reference down. I'm sorry, I didn't get to that one. But Paul would visit there when he was going to Constantinople. You know, that's sort of like halfway between Thessalonica and Constantinople. So he would stay with her in their house. They were a wealthy family, and she would help with his ministry. She was another one. Paul had no reluctance to get women involved in his ministry. He had them all over the place. Okay. Now here's one of the interesting ones. Thecla. Thecla is mentioned a lot in the New Testament and by Paul in many of the epistles. And she's recognized as a proto-martyr and equal to the apostles. Another person who's equal to the apostles. And most of you probably don't even know much about her. She's commemorated on September 24th. That's coming up. And she played a huge role. When Paul, she was in where does she live? In Lyconium, is it? I think that's the name of it, Lyconium. And Paul was traveling. This is all in that same area of Philippi. This is right outside Philippi. Paul was traveling, and he was speaking to the people. And Thecla, an 18-year-old girl, very beautiful young girl. You see, even the iconographer pays attention to a little more of the details of beauty. You know, nice hair and a beautiful face. It's amazing how many of these people that we're going to see now, the descriptions of her are always a person of beauty. Okay, and also so many of them were 18 years old of age, so just a young age here. Thecla, when she heard Paul was in the area, she wanted to hear him, but her mother would not let her hear him. Her mother had somebody that she wanted Thecla to marry, so she wouldn't let Thecla go out to hear him. So she went to her bedroom. She could hear him through the window of her bedroom. So she sat there. The Bible tells us for 3 days listening to Paul talk. And then she tried to sneak out to see him. And the mother got very, very upset about that. And so did the boyfriend who was visiting, that she wanted to marry Thecla. So they reported, this is where it gets crazy. They reported Thecla. The mother reports Thecla to the superior of the village. Yeah, okay, the chief guy there. And she said, you've got to punish her, because she keeps sneaking out to Paul. I don't want her to listen to Paul. She looked on Paul as a renegade. So this ruler here agreed and said, okay, you want me to burn her on a stake? And she said, do what you have to do. I mean, she's got to be taught a lesson here. So he had her arrested and took her into his area there, his domain. And you can see at the bottom left there, she was, put on a stake and fire lit. And as that happened, a huge thunderstorm came, huge. I mean, it flooded the area, and it wiped out the flames. So it didn't work. The ruler decided to just let her go. He said, I don't want to get involved in this. This is strange. And Paul continued to preach in that area and create a disturbance with everybody. So the mother goes back and says, you got to do something. I don't like this. She keeps sneaking out to go with Paul. He's going to leave now. He's going to take my daughter. So he arrests her, and he puts her in a jail. But then they take her to a Colosseum there. There's no big Colosseum. My thinking is it goes to Rome, but it doesn't say it. It just says they took her to an area where they had lions and bears captive, and they used to use them to feed off of Christians. This is right this is right after the time of Christ. So we've got the persecutions coming up. So they had the lions and everything, and they released a lion where she was, and the lion went up to her and just sat on her lap. And so Thecla was petting the lion. And then they sent a bigger lion out, okay? And this huge lion comes out, and the one that's on her lap goes and attacks the huge lion. Okay? Before that, a bear had come out, and the bear went to attack the lion, and the lion defeated the bear. But when the big lion came out, it was too much for him, and both the lions killed each other. All right, but Thecla was still alive. So when she saw this, she recognized, and she saw that it says that she had a vision of Christ, and Christ said, "Be calm, I will take care of you." When she was trying to sneak out with Paul, and right after her, when she was burned to the stake, or wasn't burned to the stake, she said, "I think you've seen now that I've been, protected by the Lord, and I think it's time for my baptism. I want to be baptized." And Paul said to her, "The Lord will tell you when to be baptized. You'll know when it is." And after this bout with the animals, she saw this pit of water, and she believed that was her sign now to go and be baptized. So she went into the water, and she literally baptized herself. So we do have a New Testament record of a woman, conducting a baptism. She baptized herself. And she went to Paul afterwards and told him. And, it was just like Paul predicted. He said, you will know when you're available, when it's the right time for your baptism. So she is maybe that, and so they called her the protomartyr, and she never died from that. She lived a long life. And she's also equal to the apostles. Look at that, it's 3 already. We've got equal to the apostles. So these are important people. And let me see, did I miss anything here in the notes? So we got the lions and the pit of water. She's equal to the apostle, protomartyr. So she would go on, and the Bible is not clear on, did this open the door for women to do baptisms? It's not clear. What is clear is that they were asked to be helpers. Okay, can you imagine? I mean, Paul's going around to all these churches, all these areas, all these homes. I mean, how could he be everywhere and doing all these things? He had to have help. And in those days, in the original church, the people were baptized on Easter. Okay, so it wasn't that necessarily a big deal that they had to go around to the church to baptize some people. They were all baptized on Easter. That's why we sing Osis Christon at the Easter service. Okay, Osis Christon, evapti, those who have been baptized into Christ and put on Christ. That's familiar to you, isn't it? Good, thank you, Gene. I saw your head nod. Thank you. You don't want me to keep singing, so thank you. So there's nothing clear other than the fact of what I read you that says very clearly that they were helping in the ministering of the gospel. Okay, I don't know, does that mean they just read the Bible? It doesn't sound like it, and our church feels it meant that they were actually getting involved in the service and doing parts of the service. All right, let's get on. Any questions on Thecla? So now you know. You've heard Thecla, you've heard the name, I'm sure you've heard it. Now you know how important she is. So go to church, mark your calendars for September 24th, and we'll commemorate her. And and that's where we learn a lot about her too, because the hymns that we sing in Matins will be about her. All right, St. Catherine. You all know about St. Catherine. I'm sure most of you know about St. Catherine. So I'm going to tell you the rest of the story, what you don't know about Catherine. I'll bet you. Catherine was the one, it's quoted in the Bible as a beautiful young woman, 18 years of age. And she was tortured terribly. She was put on, you see at the bottom right there of the icon, that's a kneal with bone, knives put into it. And she was tied on that thing, okay? So her body was laying on top of all this stuff. And, then they rolled it and, she was, it was brutal. But she didn't die. The scripture says that an angel came down and destroyed the wheel. Again, maybe Gabriel. I give credit to Gabriel for all this stuff anytime because he's always around. But he broke the wheel so that to relieve her from the torturing, and but she was beheaded by the ruler there at the age of 18. And they said that milk came out of the wound. Okay, milk flowed from her neck. The reason they tried to kill her, they wanted her dead, is that the leader I'm talking about is Maxentius. Now, he's one of the big guys that did, he was one of the Roman emperors. When Diocletian was going to retire, he felt that he couldn't handle the Roman Empire anymore. It was too big. That's when he broke it up into four sections. It's called a Tetrarchy. And they put somebody as a emperor in the east, somebody in the west, somebody in the south, and somebody in the north. Okay, and Maxentius was the one around Rome. He was a relative of Diocletian, I believe, and he was part of the group that was going to harass and execute a lot of the followers of Christ. And what he did with Catherine is that she had a discussion with some of Maxentius's people, servants and everything. And so, and she convinced that person to convert to Christianity. So he went and got 55 of the wisest men he knew in Rome to debate her and to put her down in her feelings. Well, as it turned out, all 55 of these guys converted to Christianity. She outwitted all of them. So Maxentius got very upset, and that's when he decided it's time to get rid of this woman, and he had her beheaded. And this angel that had taken care of her at the taking care of the wheel came down and collected her relics, her head and her body, and took her to this mountaintop. Okay, this mountaintop is called the Mount St. Catherine, and it's directly opposite. So right to my back would have been Mount Sinai. Okay, so when you go to St. Catherine's Monastery, that happens to be the highest mountain in Egypt. Okay, so that's why the angels took her there, because nobody was climbing that mountain. I climbed Mount Sinai, and it took me 4 hours to get up to the top. Tim Clun was with me. The two of us went up there. We could see the mountain. There's a monastery there at the top, and in there is where they had the relics. That's where the bones were, and eventually they would discover her head and her relics there. An angel came to the patriarch there and told him such, that the relics are up there, and they wanted them, the head guy of the monastery there, they wanted them to bring the relics down into a chapel that Helena had built. Okay, she built a chapel for St. Catherine's relics. And if you go there, they bring out her skull for you. They did for us. Of course, we had the bishop with us, so that made it, they brought it out for him, I think. And we just happened to be there. But thank God we were. It was an amazing night. And interesting, in the story of St. Catherine, I'm telling you all stuff that you probably don't know. In the story of St. Catherine, Christ comes to her at one point when she's being tortured, and gives her a ring. And there's the ring, okay? And that ring is still on St. Catherine's hand because they actually have her whole hand. They have her hand and her head, okay? And like I say, we venerated the hand and the head. And any traveler who goes there, they give them a ring, a silver ring. See, I have it here. Here's the ring. Okay. It's just like that one. AK is Ekaterina. Ekaterina. AIK. Ekaterina. That's Catherine in Greek. And it's a fascinating place. And I'm sorry that I don't think we can get there now, because even now we can't, of course. But even when it eases up, I don't know if we can get there anymore. When we went last time, you're crossing desert. It's a whole desert area. You remember Moses, had the Jews with him, and they lived in the desert for 40 years. So it's a big, vast desert. And when we went, I remember before we got into the desert, there was a post there, like an outlet post, a military post, actually. And a plainclothes security guard got on the bus with us. But he had pistols in his pocket. He had all sorts of guns and everything to protect us. So it's an area that's pirated a lot from all the times, not just now all of a sudden. It's always been an area because there's nothing around it, okay? If there's a pirate there and you're there, you're going to get robbed. So, and there's been sometimes they've attacked the tourist buses. So I don't know if it was one of the most incredible, interesting trips to go down to St. Catherine's Monastery. That was built in we know it was there in the 4th century. How do we know it was there in the 4th century? Here's a great book for you to read for the summer. Okay, it's called Following A.R.E. A.R.E. is a nun who went to all the places in Jerusalem and St. Catherine's and wrote it. And this is her notebook. This is actually what it is. And a fellow priest by the name of Lawrence Farley, he writes a lot of the books that, if you buy books from our bookstore, you probably ended up with a book by Father Raleigh. He's the one that does the New Testaments, all the New Testaments, the book on the epistles, on the Romans and everything, with the explanations. And I think he's Dina Ora's, they're related somehow. She knows of this Lawrence Farley. And I've met him a couple of times, a bright young priest. But this is a great book. This is really interesting. It's short. It's not going to take you all summer to read this. And it just describes these places there. So, Michalina, that's a good book for you to read. And get Chris to read. And if you're going to go on our trip to Jerusalem, this is a great book for preparation of that.
All right, Gerry, maybe we'll have to borrow it.
We'll have to order it. Okay. Now, this one's a little different, a little off the track, but I really wanted to cover it because I just think it's fascinated by this. I'm fascinated by the Romanovs. I've read more books on the Romanovs. I'm looking at my library. There's about 6 different books on the Romanovs that I've read. And I just find that period just incredibly fascinating. Plus, it's very influential in our church, very influential. I'm sure you know the story of the Romanovs, right? Everybody knows Nicholas and Alexandra. If somebody doesn't, just say, I don't. You don't have to identify yourself. You all know the story? So nobody wants to talk to me, huh? Michalina, I know you're there. Do you know the story of Nicholas and Alexandra?
Yes, they during the Bolshevik Revolution, he was the king, and forgot his wife's name.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Hey, Gerry, it's Charles. So he and Alexandra and the whole family, as you know, they were instrumental not only in investing a lot of money in building new churches and doing a lot of things around the church, but then obviously ultimately they were all executed. But in recent years, since the fall of communism, they've been really elevated in the knowledge of the church out of Russia. to a very high esteem.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so I don't have to go through the whole story. Nicholas was the czar, the last czar of the Romanov family. It goes, it started way back with Peter the Great. So it's the longest reigning family of czars, okay, in the Russian Empire. And he had 4 daughters and 1 son, and they're all pictured here. You got Titania, Olga, Maria, and Anastasia. It's Anastasia there. And then Alexander, the boy, is there. And the mother is the Alexandria. Well, this over here is her sister, Elizabeth. Okay. She married Alexander the third, is it? The second or third? And he was, so she was like a princess. And a beautiful woman, and another one that says the whole family's beautiful, but it's a beautiful woman. They're of German ancestry. And so Alexandra was of German ancestry. And she, Elizabeth, was a wonderful woman, very caring person, and her husband was blown apart by a revolutionary. He ran up and just threw a bomb and just blew him to bits. And after that, she became a nun. Now, Lenin wanted to get rid of all the family of the Romanovs because he didn't want the son around, Alexei, the little boy, because he's the next czar. All right, so he didn't want anybody to be able to lay claim to the title, of the czar. And the way he took care of that was to have them all executed. And Elizabeth was one of them. They had him shot in a place called, coincidentally, it's Catherine, the city of Catherine. Ekaterina, it's called. Ekaterinenburg, I believe it is. And there's a house there, the Appiative House, and that's where they had them executed. And after they executed the royal family first, okay, they took and threw them down a well shaft, okay, and just threw acid on them, just to destroy the bodies. They didn't want any of the bodies available. But through history, through time, that well was discovered and all the relics were discovered. And they brought all the relics out, and through DNA and everything, we're able to identify them all. And they also identified Anastasia. So the Yul Brynner movie with Ingrid Bergman, about Anastasia, that's she's still alive. That's been put to bed because they found her relics, her bones down there in the well, so she's dead. And after they did that, Lenin said, I want the whole family killed, so let's kill the nun. So they went to the convent, and they took Elizabeth and the other nuns that were there, several of them, and threw them down another well shaft, all right? And first of all, they clubbed them. They clubbed them, and the results that they did after they analyzed everybody showed that most of them were dead by the time they got down the well shaft because from the clubbing. But Elizabeth hadn't died, and there were a couple that were still alive. And when they got down there, they started to sing Soson Kyrie don laon. Save, O Lord, your people and bless your inheritance, which we sing a lot at Easter. We did it a lot recently. So I just find that so touching. And but they've identified her body. They have her relics, and they made them all saints. All of them are saints now. Okay, and there's a lot to this. How did they make them saints without talking to the rest of the patriarch? The synod. From the time of the split. By the way, that's going to be the subject of next week. We're going to talk about the split of the churches. But that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the fall of the Byzantine Empire, 1453. Our faith was put under control of the Turkish, the Ottoman Empire, until 1821. All right, when we got our independence. So all the people there, the church that was still there, which was the Russian Orthodox Church, they were part of the growth of all the churches, all the Orthodox churches. They felt that it was their role to assume leadership, since there was no leadership now. Now they didn't kill our patriarch; he was still alive and he was still operating in Constantinople. But I don't know if you're aware of this. The title of our patriarch is Bartholomew, and it says they're Patriarch of Constantinople and of the New Rome. Okay, when Constantine the Great moved the empire from Rome to Constantinople in 325 AD, he moved them. Then eventually the Patriarch of Constantinople would become the head one, because that's where all the seat of power was. That's why the Pope was the head in Rome, because he was there and that's where the seat of power was. So he was the leader. But now that it moved to Constantinople, the Pope is way out of contact now. So the patriarch became the head of the church. Now, it doesn't mean voting wise, power wise, or anything like that. He's not a ruler, he's not an emperor, but he's first among equals. That's the title. To this day, we still recognize the Pope. If they were ever to get back together again, the Pope would be recognized as first among equals, because the church, Peter is said to have started that church first, which we can't find much proof on that. We know he went to Antioch, and he started the church in Antioch, so he's the first patriarch of Antioch. But of the 5 areas now, or originally there were 4, Constantinople became the 5th, and the patriarch was referred to as the New Rome, the patriarch of the Byzantine Empire and the New Rome. Okay, so that when the Ottomans conquered Constantinople, the Russian Orthodox Church looked on the fact that, whoa, there's no leadership here now. He's in prison there, and they're going to kill him or execute him. So they took the mantle of the Third Rome, and you can look this up on the internet. If you type in the Third Rome, you'll get a lot of information on this. Now, in 1821, everything is back to normal as far as our patriarch is concerned in Constantinople. So there's been some, friction, a little friction going on. But the canonizing of these people these children, basically, some of them, they didn't do any miracles. They didn't do, although they say Elizabeth did, that the people were cured of some of the things that she did. But the others, it was a political thing to assert their authority in the Orthodox Church, and that's why we visited their grave sites, and they're listed there as saints, and they've got icons for them and everything. And Elizabeth, this is the interesting part about Elizabeth. This is why Michalina. Here's the one I was telling you about, Michalina. When we went to Jerusalem, when we went to the garden at Gethsemane, there's a church there. I don't know if I got the picture here for you. Let's see. Did I do it? Oh, I didn't put it in here. I'm sorry. There's, how did I get out of there? Let's get back to the slideshow. Okay. So right outside the garden at Gethsemane, there's a church. Okay. When Elizabeth had put in her notes to the other nuns there, she started actually a monastery in Russia, and it was called Mary and Martha. Mary and Martha were the 2 women, the sisters of Lazarus. She felt very closely to them for some reason, and so she built this monastery in their name. And she said, when I die, I want to go to the church. I want to be buried in the church of Mary and Martha in Jerusalem, which is the church that we went to at the garden at Gethsemane. And her relics are there. Her tomb is there, and it's open for veneration and everything. And she's venerated on July 5th. That was the day she was martyred. This is the qualifier. I got to make sure everybody knows. The pictures I use in this presentation are from Wikipedia, public domain. Material used in this presentation are from all these books. Okay. And I forgot to put this one down. Another good book for you. Women of the Church. Okay. So it's 5:08. Got time for 5 minutes of questions? Every time I hear this, I think of Simon and Garfunkel and the sonnets. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I come to talk to you again. No questions? Everybody okay?
Yeah. Gerry, who's next week so I can post about it to the young adult group?
Well, next week I'm going to talk about the split of the churches. I'll do a little review for those who have been with me for all the history parts that I did prior to Easter, prior to Pascha. We'll do a quick review, first half hour maybe a review, and the second half hour we'll go into the actual split that created the two different churches. Up to this point, there was only one church, the Church of the Christian Faith. Okay, we were all one church, and it's the split that established the Catholic Church and the Greek Orthodox Church as separate entities. And there's such misunderstandings on it. People insist that when I read about it that they call us the breakaway church. We broke away from them, and that's not what happened at all. So you want to get in on this and know, you need to know this. We have to be aware of this, that we're as much of the original church as the Catholic Church is. We were there first, and our church is still the same. And we're the original church. So I think I've covered everything. Is there any female saints that you'd like me to cover? This gives you a little background on different areas, different periods of time of the church. Did I go through? Oh man, I did it. I didn't think I'd get done in time. Yep, I did it. Okay. I did want to tell you, I was going to do a whole section on the role of women, like, deaconesses and everything. Did I talk about Phoebe? Did I miss that? She's here. We talked about her, didn't I? Where's Phoebe? Phoebe is known as, I missed Phoebe. Okay, go ahead, Jean. You raising your hand? Got a question? Jean?
No, Gerry, I didn't.
Okay. Yeah, it says here, Jean Seymour raised her hand. Okay, let me go back here to this section here. Not there. No. Okay. Phoebe is the one female in the Bible that has the title deaconess. Okay. She's the only one. There's our icon. You can see it says Phoebe the deacon. But there's nothing to say that she participated in the liturgy, that she could give communion, other than the fact that Paul says they're my helpers. Okay, and that's what a deacon does. Deacon helps. I spoke with some people, some priests up at the seminary today about that, and their answer to me was that there's enough traditional proof to them that at some period that women actually perform the roles like Father Stephen did here. But I cannot find anything in writing about it. In fact, I found things written by St. John Chrysostom, who took a very strong position against women handling any details in the church. So he and St. Paul, if you read some of the stuff from St. Paul, like the reading of the Bible for weddings, if you listen to that, it's very supportive of the fact that the men are going to operate the church, and the women are there to help the men. But like I said, Paul in the writings there also said that he used women for help. He needed the help, and he used them to administer the gospel. So there's a lot to believe that they actually did, mourn. And Phoebe has the one title of deacon.